What's going on, everybody? It's Key Time coming back with another one to talk about the NBA Eastern Conference. Now, there are a lot of teams in the NBA Eastern Conference that can make the playoffs, but I only see a few, according to the standings right here. I only see a few that can really give Boston trouble. Now, we know that Boston is the class of the Eastern Conference. Class of the NBA, I might add you. They have the best record in the NBA and will all likely have home court advantage throughout the entirety of the playoffs. So now I want to get into the Cleveland Cavaliers. Can they upset Boston in the playoffs? No, because I think that they won't get to the Eastern Conference Finals and play Boston. I believe that a team like maybe New York or Milwaukee or the Pacers can upset the Cleveland Cavaliers, kind of like what New York did last year. New York came out game one of the playoff series last year and won the first game and ultimately ended up winning the series. Now the Cavaliers, do they have a legitimate score outside of Donovan Mitchell? Do they have one? I mean, we see games and spurts here and there from a couple of bench players and a couple of players that are in the second lineup, but we don't see any consistent play. The only consistent play that we see from the Cavaliers is Donovan Mitchell putting up 30, 35 points per game. In the playoffs, all the attention is going to be centered around him. So somebody else, whether it's in the starting lineup or coming off the bench, is going to have to shoulder the load and win a couple of games, maybe even win a playoff series. But as far as right now, only thing I see is it's a one-man show in Cleveland. It's Donovan Mitchell and everybody else just riding his coattails. You need you need a good you need good bench production in the playoffs, and I don't think Cleveland has good bench production. That not even they didn't have good bench production throughout last season, and it showed up in the playoffs. And I think that that is going to happen the same this year. Now, as far as the Milwaukee Bucks, everybody know how I feel about the Milwaukee Bucks. They were leading at one point the Eastern Conference before Christmas, and ever since then, they've just been on a kind of a downward spiral. I mean, they hired Doc Rivers in the middle of the season, but Doc Rivers, he was a Bucks consultant, so he already knew what was going on inside the Milwaukee Bucks organization. Now, one thing that since his hiring, they haven't focused on defense at all. Now, I know that they won their last game Sunday versus the 76ers, but let's face it, they wasn't at full strength, and Joel Embiid wasn't playing in the game. So, the one thing that concerns me with the Milwaukee Bucks is you have legitimate scores. You can match point for point with anybody that you play out there on the basketball court. But when it comes to the playoffs, can you get timely stops and consecutive stops? We have yet to see that. In we have yet to see that from this team led by Doc Rivers. So either somebody is gonna have to come up with a good defensive scheme, or the Bucks, they might get knocked out of the first round like they did last year the by the Miami Heat. This team that is constructed for the Milwaukee Bucks right now is either going to they have the potential to contend for a championship this year, next year, and the year after that. Now, with this team right here, there's no excuse. You should win at least one championship within the next 2 or 3 years. But the way it's looking right now, if you don't have no shot blockers, no rim protectors, you are not going to be able to make it to the NBA Finals, let alone the Eastern Conference Finals. So that's what I see from the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, as far as the New York Knicks, they got lucky last night. Josh Hart made a game-winning bucket with 2.1 seconds left on the clock. I seen the press conference from Monty Williams, the Detroit Pistons head coach. He said that the referees made a mistake. The NBA has came out and said that the referees made a mistake on that call late in the fourth quarter of the Detroit Pistons New York Knicks game. But what I see is with the New York Knicks, they are a good and young, decent team, but I believe every other team in the top 7 teams in the Eastern Conference, in the Eastern Conference, I believe 6 of those teams are better than the New York Knicks. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because you know what you're gonna get with the Boston Celtics. You are gonna get Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and a good core of bench players coming together. With Cleveland, you know at times, you are going to have the consistent dominant force of Donovan Mitchell with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Plus, you will have a decent bench from time to time, put up points. With the Bucks, they still hit and miss, but hopefully they will do a lot more winning now since they've got Doc Rivers at the helm. Now that brings me back to the New York Knicks. Now, the New York Knicks, their last 10 games, they are 4-6. You almost lost to the Detroit Pistons last night. And plus, you got a tough schedule coming up. You got to play Miami. You got to play the Pacers. You got to play Cleveland. You got to play the Bucks. You got to play even the Magic at least 2 more times. And the Hawks. I'm not going to forget about the Hawks. Because the Hawks, if the playoffs start today, the Hawks would be in the play-in tournament. So, where I see the New York Knicks, I see them winning a playoff series, but in the Eastern Conference semis, they're gonna get knocked out by a more superior team, maybe, and I do mean maybe, the Pacers, because we already know that they have a guy named Tyrese Halliburton. He is balling out of control this year. Plus, Miami is no slouch, and the Orlando Magic, they can also give you trouble in a 7-game playoff series. So the New York Knicks, good, decent team, but they're not going to make it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. For the Philadelphia 76ers, their team relies solely upon one man, Joel Embiid. If Joel Embiid is not ready for the playoffs, and if he doesn't come back at least a few games before the playoffs start, you can already book the 76ers out of the playoffs after the first round. Because when it comes to Joel Embiid not playing, there is so much attention. Well, when Joel Embiid is playing, he requires so much attention. Joel Embiid, he's averaging 33 points a game this season, plus 10 rebounds and 8 assists. So there's so much offensive production that's not on the floor when he's out. And you have seen that from the 76ers in the last 10 games. To be exact, the last 10 games, the Philadelphia 76ers are 3-7. Most of the offensive load, it has had to come from the bench players and plus those other starters. We know what the 76ers are we know what the 76ers are with Joel Embiid. We also know what the 76ers are without Joel Embiid. So I hope Joel Embiid come back for the playoffs, and I hope he comes back at full strength. As of right now, if the playoffs start today, the Philadelphia 76ers would be playing the Indiana Pacers. And from the looks of it, the Pacers, they have a better team than the Philadelphia 76ers right now. But if Joel Embiid comes back, I'm gonna give it to the 76ers as far as winning that playoff series. That's if those two teams play in the playoffs. So that's all I got for the 76ers. The Indiana Pacers are gonna win a playoff series. They're gonna win one playoff series. They're gonna win the first round. Don't know who they're gonna play. Maybe they may play the 76ers, or who knows, they may even play the Miami Heat. As far as the standings right now in the Eastern Conference, from 2 to 10, the win and loss record is so close. In a week's time, we may be talking about a different team in the second or third spot. That is how close these teams and these wins and these records are playing right now. So as far as the Miami Heat, they still have Jimmy Butler. I'm not going to put them to the side. I am not going to underestimate the Miami Heat. I mean, they won last night versus the Sacramento Kings. I was surprised that they was able to even put up a fight, because half of their roster, most of those guys were hurt. So that's all I see from the Miami Heat. Rough, young, grimy team. Make games look ugly. That's basically what the Miami Heat do. They make every game look ugly, and if they keep it close, the last 3-4 minutes of the fourth quarter, then they have those guys make a couple plays and take the game over. That's all I have for the Miami Heat. Now for the Orlando Magic. They are a young and upcoming team. I believe that they'll make the playoffs. With this team, they are going to gain some experience while going to the playoffs. I don't think that they'll win a playoff series, but this will be good. This will be a good experience for them, getting to know what playoff atmosphere is like. So that's all I see from the Orlando Magic. I will be surprised if they win a playoff series this year. And as far as the Chicago Bulls, I'll be surprised if they make the playoffs. I'm actually giving the Atlanta Hawks more of a puncher's chance to make the playoffs, because we all know how Trae Young, he wills his team to victory, and we also know how Javante Murray can also catch fire throughout the games, and on a nightly basis he can put up 25 to 30 points. So the Atlanta Hawks, they will make the playoffs. I see them making the playoffs. Even though, well, the play-in tournament is just like making the playoffs. So the Atlanta Hawks, I see them making the playoffs, and I can see them beating a team like the Miami Heat. I don't see them too much beating the Indiana Pacers or Philadelphia 76ers. That's if Joel Embiid comes back. Now, if he doesn't come back, the Atlanta Hawks, they'll have a good chance at beating the Philadelphia 76ers. So, and with that, those are my outlooks for the Eastern Conference Finals, for the Eastern Conference in the NBA, excuse me. So, please like, comment, share, subscribe, click the notification bell to get notified of every upload that I do and every video that I do. And another thing, always remember, the key is always on time.